young boy. In my adult life, I became one of the most powerful generals ever known. I am Alexander the Great. I was born in 356 BC in Pella, Macedonia. My parents were Philip II and Olympias. At that time in Greece, the people despised us as barbarians. As a child, I had a tutor named Aristotle. He taught me many things like the new sciences of botany, zoology, geography, and medicine. I loved Homer's Iliad. My biggest interest was military strategy. In 336 BC, my father was murdered. My mother was accused of plotting his death, so I became king at age 20. I also decided I would conquer some countries. As on our conquest to Asia Minor, we went to Persia to conquer it. My army and I fought Darius, the Persian king, and his army. We fought for many days, but until Darius fled. We automatically won the battle for conquering Persia. As we traveled across the continent, I met a beautiful woman named Roxana. She was a chieftain's daughter. We fell in love and got married a few months later. As we marched on, we conquered many more places. One day, in a battle, I was shot in the lung by another soldier. When I was shot, my friend shot the soldier who shot me. I stayed in bed for many days, but luckily I recovered. A couple months later, Roxana was pregnant. If the baby was a boy, he would become king. But if it was a girl, the people would not have a ruler. One day, my men and I decided to throw a party in our success. Before I went to the party, I suddenly felt ill. I stayed in bed that night, then I got a fever. Everyone said goodbye to me as I died. I passed away in June of 323 BC in Babylon. After I died, my son was born, Alexander III. I never got to meet my child. Everyone remembers me for being a great general and a powerful ruler. All of my men and Roxana were very sad. They buried me in a beautiful tomb encased in gold leaf in Alexandria, Egypt. I am Alexander the Great, the greatest general of all time.
I am one of the greatest of all times at catching crocodiles. I'm known for my TV show Crocodile Hunter, my Australian zoo, and for loving the wildlife. I am Stephen. I was born on February 22nd, 1962 in Victoria, Australia, which was also my mother's 20th birthday. I had one sister named Joy. My father, Bob Irwin, was a successful plumber. My mother, Lynn Irwin, was a nurse for newborns. When I was 8, we moved to Queensland, Australia. We had to live in an RV trailer for 2 years. I attended Landsberg State School. We had to wear school uniforms. My dad and I loved to go to the bush. When I was 9, I caught my first freshwater crocodile. I attended Cauldron State High School, and after I graduated, I took over management and renamed the park to the Australian Zoo in 1990. In 1992, Crocodile Hunter began filming. Also in 1992, I met the love of my life, Terry Rains. I married Terry on June 4th, 1992. Part of our honeymoon came part of our 1992 TV show. The TV show debuted on U.S. television in 1996. We had our first child named Bindi Sue Irwin and our second child named Robert Clarence Irwin. When Bindi was 8, she had her own TV show called Jungle Girl. As we got more and more famous, I thought it was hard to keep our privacy. Sometimes I had to find the time to help everyone who needed it. Sometimes I had to refer to my mother, so it was hard for me to lose her. On September 4th, 2006 was a very sad day because I was swimming with the stingray. The stingray got mad and started striking at me. One of the strikes pierced my heart. Shortly after, I died. I am famous for my dangerous encounters, loving the wildlife, and my family still owns the zoo in my memory. The Queensland Museum named a type of tree snail after me. I am Steve Irwin.
Hello, I am Benjamin Franklin. I was born on January 17th, 1706. I went to school for 2 years as a young man and then became a printer at the age of 12. Then I made my first almanac called Poor Richard's Almanac. It it sold 10,000 copies a year and became one of the most popular almanacs in America during that time. Then when the governor of Pennsylvania saw my work, he was impressed. Then Governor of Pennsylvania sent me to England so I could get printing supplies, so I could do better at printing. Then I got stranded in England after when the governor of Pennsylvania didn't send me money to buy the printing supplies. And then 1 year later, I got freed from England and then married my wife, Deborah, from Pennsylvania. We had 3 children, William, Sally, and Francis. Then we married the Pennsylvania Gazette. It was one of the top leading newspaper companies in America during that time. Then we made a lot of money and we became rich. And then I became an inventor to do good for other people that are in need of new things. I created the Franklin stove, glass harmonica, and lightning rods. Then after I helped sign the Declaration of Independence, before that, the Revolutionary War began between England and America. Then, a couple years later, America won the war, and I helped sign the Declaration of Independence of America. And then, France sent me to go to Congress in France so I could get support for a new nation. As a old man. Then, when Congress said I could leave, I went back to Pennsylvania and got in time to help sign the Constitution of the United States of America. Then, sadly, a couple years later, I died on April 17, 1790. It was a sad time for me, but I was famous for making it. Famous inventions like the Franklin stove, glass harmonica, and lightning rods, and was famous for doing good for other people and being a famous old American, and I'm remembered today. I am Benjamin Franklin.
Hi, I am Rose Parks. It was a sunny day when I was taking the Montgomery City bus. I was sitting on the bus when a white man got on and had to stand. I was ordered to move. I did not move. The bus driver called the police. I sat because I wanted to help change segregation. I was born on February 4th, 1913. My mother, little brother, and I lived with my grandparents on their farm. My grandfather slept with a shotgun because he was afraid the Klan would try to hurt us. I attended the Montgomery Industrial School for Girls. White teachers from the north taught poor black girls from the south. The school was set on fire by some white people that were angry that white teachers were teaching black students, and the school had to close. I returned to an all-black school. I had to drop out of school when I was 16 because my grandmother got sick. I had to clean white people's houses to make money for my family. When I was 20 years old, I married Raymond Parks. He was a barber and a member of the Montgomery NAACP. I was a nurse's assistant and a seamstress. Later, I worked as a secretary at the desegregated military base. But I rode the segregated bus to and from work every day. In 1943, I joined the NAACP. I was the secretary of the NAACP for 12 years. I helped find lawyers for black people who were falsely accused of crimes. I helped register black people to vote. This was very hard work. I also tried to integrate the public library, but black children were turned away. I was very frustrated with how unfair segregation was, especially bus segregation. Black people rode in the back of the bus. We had to pay through the front of the bus, then get off the bus and enter through the back door. We were not allowed to walk past white people. I rode the bus every day and I felt ashamed every time I rode. On December 1st, 1955, I rode the bus home from work. The bus was very crowded that day. A white man had a stand. The bus driver ordered me to give up my seat so the white man could sit down. I calmly said no. I was arrested and taken to jail. When I got out of jail, I did two important things. I sued the bus company and I helped organize a bus boycott. For over a year, Black people did not ride the city buses and the buses lost money. During that time, I lost my trial, but my lawyer knew that was unfair. My case was heard by the United States Supreme Court. On November 13th, 1956, the court ruled that bus segregation was unconstitutional. I was a hero, but I received so many threats that my family and I had to move to Detroit, Michigan. In Detroit, I worked for civil rights for the rest of my life. I lived to be 92 years old. By refusing to give up my seat, the civil rights movement began. I'm remembered as a mother of the civil rights movement. I am Rosa Parks.
Ready? I found I could say things of color and shapes that I couldn't say in any other way, things I had no words for. I am one of the greatest 20th century women painters in America. I am Georgia O'Keeffe. I was born on November 15th, 1887 near Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. I grew up on a family farm and I'm the second of 7 children. My mother wanted me to learn decorative painting, so at 12 I began taking private drawing and painting lessons. I realized I wanted to be an artist. In 1902, I moved to Williamsburg, Virginia, and graduated from Chatham Boarding School. In 1904, I studied art at the Art Institute of Chicago. After recovering from typhoid fever in 1907, I moved to New York City to become a member of the Art Students League of New York. I took a job in Chicago as an illustrator, but I got measles that affected my eyes, and I moved back home to Virginia at age 23. My sisters convinced me to go back to art school at the University of Virginia. At UVA, Professor Alan Benton who taught me about his art teacher, Arthur Wesley Dow. By 1914, I moved back to New York City to study with Dow. He was a modernist artist that influenced my art and my desire to be a professional artist. In 1915, I taught art at Columbia College at Columbia, South Carolina. I was alone and found my own abstract style. I mailed my drawings to my classmate in New York City, telling her not to show anyone. She sent them to Alfred Stieglitz at Gallery 291. He exhibited 10 of my drawings in May 1916 and the solo show in April 1917, without me knowing. Once I found out, I was furious, but I realized how great it was for my career. By 1918, Stieglitz offered to support my art for a year. We spent our time between New York City and his estate. We fell in love and were married in 1924. We were so busy with my career in Gallery 291, we had no children. In 1934, I discovered Ghost Ranch, a dude ranch in the desert of New Mexico. I lived half the year here and the rest in New York. After Alfred passed away in 1946, I traveled the world continuing abstract painting and managed my career. By the mid-1970s, my eyesight was failing, but I continued painting. I lived in New Mexico until I died in 1986 at 98 years old. While I was alive, I saw 900 of my works of art exhibited in major art museums, made a fortune, and received many awards, including the highest honor for a civilian, the United States Medal of Freedom. I am here today for being one of America's first women modernist painters of the 20th century. I am Georgia O'Keeffe.
I was born as a healthy child. A couple years later, I got polio, and then I found my way to walk, and then run, and eventually race. A couple years later, I got into the Olympics. I was the first African American to win 3 gold medals. I am Wilma Rudolph. I was born June 23, 1940 in Bethlehem, Tennessee. When I was a little girl, I had to wear a leg brace. My doctor told me I would never walk again. My mother told me I would, but I believed my mother. A couple years later, I had to go to physical therapy. Finally, a few years later, I was all better, so I got into basketball in high school. I was a star. Suddenly, at age 14, a track coach from Tennessee State University asked if I wanted to try out. Of course, I said yes. At age 16, I traveled to Australia for the Summer Olympics. I was the AAU 100-yard dash champion from 1959 to 1962. Before the Olympics Games at Rome, I set the world record of 22.9 seconds for the 200-meter race. I was married to Robert Eldridge. I had 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys. After returning as a runner, I taught, coached, and gave speeches. I am remembered as one of the fastest women in track and as a great athlete. I once said, winning is great, sure, but if you're really going to do something in life, the secret is learning how to lose. Nobody goes undefeated all the time. If you can pick up after crushing defeat and go on to win again, you're going to be a champion one day. I founded the Wilma Rudolph Foundation to provide athletes and to encourage children to overcome. I worked on Operation Champions to provide children and teenagers in the nation's largest ghetto sports trainings. I sadly died from brain cancer on November 12, 1994, I was famous for being the first African American to win 3 gold medals. I am Wilma Rudolph.
I grew up from struggling in chemistry and physics to one of the world's most famous primatologists. I am Diane Fossey. I was born January 15th, 1932 and grew up in San Francisco, California. When I was 6, my parents divorced. I didn't see much of my real father after that, but I missed him a lot. A year later, my mother married Richard Fossey. My new stepfather was very strict and would never let me have pets, even though I loved animals. When I got older, I went to business school, mostly to please my parents. Soon, to pay for school, I worked as a clerk and even a machine operator at a factory. Soon after, I went to San Jose College to become an occupational therapist. And in 1954, I became the director of an occupational therapy program in a small Kentucky hospital in the countryside, where I developed a program that allowed me to reach children with developmental issues. Early in my career, a colleague of mine invited me on a trip to Africa, but I couldn't financially afford it. It took me 3 years to finally afford the trip and go to Africa to see the animal that I loved. While I was in Africa, I saw the gorillas and fell in love with them. Soon after, decided to devote my life to studying the gorillas. After that, I got in contact with Dr. Louis Leakey, who offered me a job as a gorilla researcher. He told me the job would force me to live in the wild for months and months on end. While living in the wild, I used my technique for helping children with developmental issues to get close to the gorillas and create a special bond with many of them. After several years of living in the wild, I used my technique for helping children. I established the Cary Sophia Research Center, and after a while found that the area was frequently used by herders and poachers. The herders' livestock kept disturbing the natural habitat of the animals and poachers, but they normally didn't hunt the gorillas, but they got caught in their traps of other animals. At that point I realized if I wanted to study the gorillas, I would also have to protect them. Little did I know this would become the fight of my life. 2 days after Christmas in 1985, I was found dead in my cabin. Many people around the world suspected it was a poacher who caused my death. I had struggled with them my entire life. I will always be remembered for my lifelong research and protection of the gorillas, and my research is now being used around the world for bettering the lives of gorillas and zoos. I am Diane Fossey.
I was an American author, a political activist, and a lecturer. I'm remembered today for being the first blind and deaf woman to earn a Bachelor of Arts degree and write more than 10 books. I am Helen Keller. I was born on June 27, 1880 in Tuscumbia, Alabama. When I was 19 months old, I came down with scarlet fever. The doctor said I wouldn't make it, but a couple of days later I recovered. It only took what I did until my mother realized there was something wrong with me. She passed her arm in front of me. I didn't blink. She rang the dinner bell. I didn't come. My father said my name. I didn't flinch or even look up. Sadly, the sickness left me blind and deaf. I was a very playful and curious child. I loved playing with my dolls and my stuffed animals. My parents gave me a lot of attention, but everything changed when my sister Mildred was born. At age 6, I had made over 60 signs to communicate with my family. Putting my hair in a bun meant I wanted my mom, and putting invisible glasses on my face meant I wanted my dad. My parents were worried about me, so they took me to a doctor's office who recommended Alexander Graham Bell. Yep, you heard me right. He was the guy who invented the telephone in 1876. He was also a doctor too. He said that I would never see again, but that my family needed to hire a teacher for me. That's what they did. They hired Annie Suglin from the Perkins Institution for the Blind, school in Boston for blind people. Annie didn't like the way he behaved because I was very spoiled. Since my parents own a cottage close by, she decided that she and I would live there for 2 weeks. During those 2 weeks, I developed trust in Annie. I learned how to fold my clothes and also sew. A couple of months later, I learned 400 words, which started with my first word, water. Annie spelled it in my hand when we were washing dishes one day. A couple of days later, I learned to read in Braille, which is a system of raised dots teaching blind people to read. At age 14, me and Annie moved to New York. Why were we in New York? Well, I was going to attend Wright Humpson Oral School for the Blind. I made more progress at Wright Humpson by learning how to speak French, German, and Greek. I also learned arithmetic and geography. I wanted to go to Radcliffe University, which is a sister school with Harvard. Annie decided I should go to Cambridge School for Young Ladies because she believed that was the right school to prepare me for college. I graduated from Cambridge in 1900. I was so smart I graduated 2 years ahead of my class. That made me the first blind and deaf woman to attend college. I attended Radcliffe University. Annie also went because she wanted to be by my side. In 1902, Annie hired an English professor from Harvard University named John Mason.
She hired him in order to help me graduate. And in 1904, with the help of John Macy and Annie, I graduated from Radcliffe University, making me the first blind and deaf woman to earn a Bachelor of Arts degree. John and Annie fell in love and were married in 1905. John, Annie, and I moved to Renton, Massachusetts. A couple of years later, I joined a socialist party that was fighting for women's right to vote. I was also a member of the National Association for Colored People. I gave speeches all around the world, with Annie always by my side. A couple of years later, I wrote more than 12 books. 2 are very famous today, The Miracle Worker and The Story of My Life. A couple of months later, Annie had some health problems, so she hired Polly Thompson to help me when she couldn't. At that time, I invited my mom to come and live with us, and she lived with us for 5 years until she sadly died of pneumonia. In 1918, directors from Hollywood started making movies on my childhood. In 1920, I started a new career as an actress, and I traveled all around the world with a play showing my life. But unfortunately, because of Annie's health, she couldn't be with me at the plays. And Polly helped out by being with me at the plays. After being together for over 50 years, Annie sadly died in 1935. I was heartbroken, but I still did plays with Polly until 1960, when another tragic event happened. Polly died of a heart attack. At the end of my life, I traveled all around the world fundraising for people with disabilities like me. In 1964, I was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Lyndon Johnson. I died on June 1st, 1968, at the age of 87. I changed the lives of many blind and deaf people. I impacted the world, and that's why I'm remembered today. Like I once said, the best and most beautiful things in life cannot be seen or even heard, but must be felt with by the heart. I am Helen Keller.
Hi, my name is Audrey Hepburn. I was a British actor, humanitarian, and a fashion icon. I was born on May 4th, 1929 in Belgium. At age 22, I started my first Pride production. 2 years later, I starred in the film Roman Holiday. In 1961, my film with Barbie the most success, Breakfast at Tiffany's Air. This film won me an Emmy, Tony, Grammy, and an Academy Award. My success was critical as a child as I endured hardships in Nazi-occupied Holland. My mother temporarily changed my name to Edda van Heemstra because she was worried it would ruin my British heritage. After the war was over, I continued to study ballet, acting, and working as a model. At this time, I also began to get some small film roles credited as Audrey Hepburn. In 1968, I chose to devote more of my time to my family, and I only acted occasionally. My passion for helping children was known, and I was appointed as a Goodwill Ambassador of UNICEF. My first mission for UNICEF was in Ethiopia in 1988, where I visited an orphanage that housed 500 starving children and supplied food and vaccines for them. I was passionate about raising awareness for children in need. Sadly, I died January 20th, 1993 of colon cancer. My work around the world to help children in need still continues as my 2 sons, Sean and Luca, established the Audrey Hepburn Memorial Fund. For beautiful eyes, look for the good in others. For beautiful lips, speak only words of kindness. And for poise, walk with the knowledge that you're never alone. I am Audrey Hepburn.
I was the first ever woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. I am Amelia Earhart. I was born in Atkinson, Kansas on July 24th, 1897. Girls my time were not allowed to play sports or get dirty, but my mom and dad encouraged me to play like the boys. So my dad bought me a wooden bat and a baseball. During the winter time, I loved sledding down icy hills. When I was 7 years old, my mom and dad took me to the state fair, and I saw an airplane flying in the sky, and that's how I got my love for flying. I went to a college preparatory school, and I was a really fast learner, and I loved reading. I served in the military hospital in 1918, and at first I was against marriage, but then finally I met George P. Putnam, and we were married. I got my pilot license in 1921, and I began practicing flying long distances. Then finally, it was a big day. I was going to fly all the way across the world. It was during that flight when my plane had went down, and sadly I died June 1st, 1937, and no one has ever found my body or my plane, and I am still one of the world's biggest mysteries. After my death, George P. Putnam wrote a biography about me. I am Amelia Earhart.
Hello, I am known as the father of modern technology because of my many high-tech inventions. I am Nikola Tesla. I was born on July 10th, 1856 in Snowden, Croatia. I was very smart, even as a child. When I was 7 years old, I fixed a fire pump. I could also do advanced math problems in my head that some kids couldn't do on a sheet of paper. I did some not so great things as well. For instance, once I tried to fly when hanging out the window with an umbrella. It was a shock to me when my dad said his job required us to move to Gosport, Croatia. The schools I attended were Real Gymnasium, Higher Gymnasium, and the Polytechnic Institute.
One day my college professor was talking about direct current, where I said, why not alternating current? He said it was impossible, so during my third year at Polytechnic Institute, I dropped out to work on it. It took me a long time to finish. As soon as I did, I took it to George Westinghouse. I got sick very often as a boy. Some of the serious diseases I had were malaria and cholera. I was having trouble making money since Edison told me he would give me $50,000 if I made the generator SS organ. When I did, he said that he was joking, so I quit. I was a scientist and an engineer. I never married anyone because I said it would take too much time away from my inventions. I died of a heart attack on January 7th, 1943. Famous quote I remember for is, I'm not mad they stole my idea, I'm mad they don't have any of the room. I'm remembered for my inventions, but most importantly, I'm remembered for making modern technology possible. I am Nikola Tesla.
Hi, I'm Ulkurt Christensen. I created Lego. I am remembered for changing the world with simple bricks. Lego, my company, became the most popular construction set in the world. I was born on April 7th, 1891 in Denmark. As a young boy, my family was poor. To pass the time, I would carve wooden figures. When I was 6 years old, I went to school twice a week. When I was 14 years old, I stopped going to school. My older brother was a carpenter. I became my brother's apprentice. In 1914, I was awarded a journeyman certificate. A journeyman certificate is a license for an electrician. I married Christine Sorensen. We had 3 sons. Sadly, my wife died in childbirth. 1 year later, I married Sophie Sorensen. We had a daughter. My first business was a carpentry shop in Denmark. My shop made houses and furniture. During the Great Depression, people could not afford the stuff that I made, so I started making smaller items like toys. The name Lego comes from the Dutch phrase "they got," which means play well. Play well. I bought a plastic molding machine. In 1949, the first Lego bricks were made. Sadly, I died of a heart attack on March 11th, 1958. I remember creating an empire of bricks. I am Ulkurt Christensen. Gotta do good.
The only thing better than singing is more singing, I once said. I was a famous singer that could bring the dance into my feet all the way up to my throat, and it'll come out as a beautiful song. I can imitate a variety of instruments from many bands, and was often referred to as First Lady of Song, Queen of Jazz, or even Lady Ella. I am Ella Jane Fitzgerald. I was born April 25th, 1917 at Newport News. I had a sister named Frances de Sylvia, a father named William Fitzgerald, and a mother named Temperance, Tempe for short. Tempe and I were very close. We would sing along with the phonograph, and Frances would crank the handle back to start it over. Again and again and played, and we would never get tired. Shortly after my birth, my parents divorced. However, they stayed good friends throughout their entire lives. Sadly, my mom died in a car accident in 1931 when I was only 14. I took the loss of my mother very seriously. I was given to my aunt, who took care of me but gave me no little affection, only a roof, food, and a place to sleep. I started skipping school and did things I shouldn't have, writing errors for gambling men, helping people in trouble with the law. I myself broke the law once, twice. Before I knew it, I was being sent to the orphanage where I was looked and treated very badly. After 2 years, I ran away. I began my formal education at age 6 and was an outstanding student. I went to Rider Junior High School a couple years later. At this age, I loved dancing. My dreams of becoming a dancer came to a crossroads with my desire for jazz music in my youth. I loved Louis Armstrong, Bing Crosby, and the Boswell Sisters' music. As a child, I wanted to be a dancer, but when I sang at the New York City Apollo, I won first prize. I was well known for my singing and recording novelty songs in my early career. As stars rose in the jazz impresario, Norman Gras became my manager in the 1950s. I recorded a 19-volume series of songbooks in which I remade 250 songs by intelligent musicians such as Richard Rodgers, Cole Porter, and more. This material demonstrated my imperative skills clearly. I married at least twice. The first person I married was Benny Quickney for only a year, then married Ray Brown. Together we had one child named Ray Brown Jr. after his father. Even though I still continued to perform beautifully, I started to experience health problems in the 1970s. Soon after my heart surgery in 1986, I had to have my legs amputated, cut off, because of severe diabetes. I died June 15, 1996 at age 79. I was buried in Beverly Hills, California. As I said about 24 years ago, it isn't where you came from, it's where you're going that counts. I am Ella Fitzgerald.
I'm famous for helping blacks make a difference in baseball. I am Jackie Robinson. I was born January 31st, 1919 in Cairo, Georgia. My father left the family when I was 3, and my mother moved the family to Pasadena, California. When we moved, our neighbors hated us. They tried to make us move by calling the police and telling them we were too noisy. I went to college UCLA and played basketball, baseball, and football. I could no longer afford college, so I went into the U.S. Army. I played for an all-black baseball league called the Negro Leagues. After a year, Brand Trickley, the Broken Daughters managers, asked if I would play for him. I said yes, but I was not allowed to go where white men could in bathrooms, hotels, and restaurants. In 1947, I married Jackie. I married Rachel Izum, and we've had 3 children: Jackie Jr., Sharon, and David Robinson. I won 1 World Series out of the 6 World Series I went into, and played 10 seasons. After baseball, I worked for social change and was a segregation businessman. I walked with Martin Luther King Jr. in the boycotts several times. In 1972, I died because of a heart attack at age 55. I'm remembered today for helping blacks make a difference in baseball. I am Jackie Robinson.
I was a boy that hated school and dropped out at 12 to someone make the most popular chocolate factory and business. I am Milton Hershey. I was born in the mid-1800s on a little farm in Hawksville, Pennsylvania. I moved around a lot when I was little. First, I moved to a farm in Titusville, Pennsylvania. Then I moved to a farm called Nine Points. Sadly, we didn't have much luck farming, so we didn't have a lot of money, and even struggled to get food. I wasn't a good student, and since I moved around a lot, I moved to several schools when I was little. Eventually, I dropped out at only age 12. When I dropped out, I went to the printing business, but I hated it, and I intentionally dropped a straw hat into a printer. About a year later, I worked at Royer's Ice Cream for 4 years and loved it. And I left it because that inspired me to open my first candy shop. So, when I was only 19, I opened my first candy shop. I didn't sell chocolate because it was a luxury item and it would melt quickly. Sadly, I got sick and had to stay in bed for a whole month. And then I closed down my shop and headed home for Lancaster, Pennsylvania. When I closed down my shop, I headed home for Lancaster, Pennsylvania. About a year later, I followed my father's footsteps and went mining. But I didn't like it that much, and yet I still had a dream that I would open a candy shop. So I opened a candy shop in New York. But it wasn't successful, and at the same time, my father made me get into the cough drop business. That wasn't successful either. So I closed down both shops, and I got a loan and learned to sell caramel in big batches. I would always go across the street to the hotel and sell them. Finally, I got a huge sale. A rich man from England came to America to try my candy. He tried mine and loved it. He got a lot of them and shipped them back to England. I got so much money from that I could pay off my loan and build a huge company. So I built Lancaster Caramel Company. About a year later, I went to Chicago and I saw a huge milk chocolate sculpture. That inspired me to open Hershey. So about a year later, I sold the caramel company and opened Hershey. About a year later, I met who was going to be my wife. Her name was Catherine Sweet, and her nickname was Kim. About a year later, we got married. Sadly, we couldn't have kids because of her disease. So I bought 12,000 acres for my workers, and I built an orphan school there because we couldn't have kids. Sadly, about 15 years after Kitty and I got married, Kitty died. I was heartbroken. And in her memory, I secretly gave all my socks to the orphan school. One day, I started not breathing now. Then I could barely even breathe at all. Sadly, I died on October 13th, 1945. I'll always be remembered for my kindness, my generosity, and I always care. I am Milton Hershey.
When I was a young girl, I was called Little Professor by my grandmother. I grew up to be the first African-American woman to read my poem on the Pulse of Morning at a presidential inauguration. I am Maya Angelou. I was born April 4th, 1928 in St. Louis, Missouri. My mom and dad were Vivian Baxter and Bailey Johnson. I had an older brother named Bailey Jr. Bailey couldn't pronounce Margaret and called me my sister. The name stuck and everyone called me Maya. Later on, when I was 3 years old, my parents divorced. Neither parent thought they could take care of us, so they put us on a train to our grandparents in Stamps, Arkansas. We had tags on our shirts explaining who we were and why we were there. People felt bad for us and gave us cold fried chicken and potato salad. We moved into Mama Henderson, our grandmother, and our Uncle Willie's house. Stamps was a small, segregated town. Mom owned a small general store in the black neighborhood. I was homeschooled. Our uncle did not want us falling behind. He taught us how to memorize the times tables, read, and write. One day, my father came to visit us for 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, he took us back to St. Louis, Missouri to see our mother. At school in Missouri, Bailey and I were the best students. A couple years later, I tried out for dance and drama in high school. I soon won a scholarship to attend classes at a local college. As Bailey and I grew up, Bailey lost interest in school, started to hang out with troublemakers. This caused Bailey and Mom to fight. One day, after a really big fight, Bailey left the house. I was crushed. I started doing bad in school, so I dropped out. I started showing up at the railway station trying to get a job. After months of going, I became the first African-American cable car conductor in San Francisco. I worked there a whole semester, then remembered how important school was. In school, I did great, but in senior year, I became pregnant. I still managed to stay in school, though. I graduated at 17, and 3 weeks after graduation, I became a mom to Guy. During the next 7 years, I worked as a waitress and cook to support Guy and myself. When I was 22, I got a job as a music clerk. At work one day, I met a sailor named Tosh Angeles. We both loved music, and Tosh loved to spend time with Guy. He taught him chess and baseball. Soon after meeting, Tosh and I decided to get married, but it was too soon. I then realized Tosh and I had nothing else in common. When we divorced, I kept the name Angeles but changed the S to a U. I quit being a music clerk and became a calypso dancer and singer at a nightclub. At the beginning, I was scared to sing and dance. Once I started, it all came naturally. Soon, reporters began asking for interviews. And I also appeared on television shows and radios. One evening, a group of dancers and singers came to see one of my shows. They were touring and performing Porgy and Bess. The show is about African Americans' lives in the 1920s. The people in charge loved my performance. They invited me to try out for a part. I accepted and got the part. Soon I was traveling the world to Canada, Italy, France, Egypt, and other parts of Africa. Even though I enjoyed traveling, I missed Guy. We would talk for hours on the phone. Sometimes at the end we would cry. One day my mother called me and told me Guy was terribly ill. I rushed home and promised I would never leave him again. Years later, I began writing. I wrote my first autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. It was a huge success. Sadly though, on May 28, 2014, I died in my home. I will always be remembered for being the first African American woman to read my poem on the Pulse of Morning at a presidential inauguration. At the end, I said, and say simply, very simply, with hope, good morning, I am Maya Angelou.
As the director of over 300 cartoons, I live to entertain myself and others. I am Chuck Jones. I was born in 1912 in Spokane, Washington. As a kid, I loved to draw and read. School bored me, so before college, my father enrolled me in an art institute. When I graduated in 1931, the country was experiencing the Great Depression, but the movie business was not hurt. I then went to work for Ub Iwerks and worked for him for 2 years before being fired by a secretary named Dorothy Webster. Soon after, I married that same secretary. I then went to work for Leon Schlesinger Productions, which became Warner Brothers Cartoons. Here I wrote and directed my most famous work, Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies cartoons. I also helped create Private Snafu for the World War II military with my friend Theodore Geisel, or Dr. Seuss. While at Warner Brothers, I created Martha the Martian, Pepe Le Pew, Wile E. Coyote, and the Roadrunner. These 4 characters became my most popular creations. I won 3 Academy Awards for my work. I also directed the film What's Opera Doc, which went on to be put in the National Film Registry. After working for Warner Brothers, I created my own independent animation studio and eventually went to work for MGM. It was at MGM that I directed The Dot on the Line, for which I won my 3rd Academy Award. 1978 was a sad time for me. My wife Dorothy passed away. I got remarried 3 years later to Marion Durham. In 1996, I was awarded an honorary Academy Award for my contributions to animation. Unfortunately, I died of heart failure at the age of 89 in 2002. In my lifetime, I created many animated characters and directed over 300 cartoons. I will always be remembered as one of the greatest animators of all time. As I once said, animation isn't the illusion of life, it is life. It was definitely my life. Well, as the saying goes, that's all, folks.
I am Anna Eleanor Roosevelt. I was married to Franklin D. Roosevelt, the President of our country. I was the first lady and was known for helping our country with segregation. I was born October 11th, 1884 in New York. When I was 2 years old, my parents took me to the Britannic ship. One day, it started to sink. My dad said, "Jump, Eleanor, I will catch you." I was still scared, but I jumped anyway. When I was little, my mom was prettier than me, and I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. My dad and I were very close. When I was 8 years old, my mom died of diphtheria, a disease that also took the life of my brother. Tragically, 2 years later, my dad died. I was very sad. I moved in with my grandmother. She was very strict. She made me do a lot of things for her. I begged to go to England, and she finally said yes. I went to England to start a new life. I attended Allens Wood School. Everybody loved me. I was the top student. A year later, I returned to New York to help my grandmother. I begged so much to go back to Allens when my grandma said yes. All my teachers and friends were excited to see me. I finished school and went back home. I was excited to see my brothers. Then I met Franklin Roosevelt. It was like instant love. Even though he was my 5th cousin, we still loved each other. His mom did not approve of us getting married. She said, "You're too young." We waited a year to get married. Then we had Anne. 2 years later, we had Franklin Jr., but sadly died the same year. I had a total of 6 kids. Then Franklin was elected president, and I was the first lady. We were all excited and proud of Franklin. I decided to have a big picnic with almost the whole country. It was going to be in a lovely field. I was going to make my famous hot dogs. Queen Elizabeth was coming. We were going to have food, entertainment, and music. 2 months later, after the picnic, World War II started. Later, Franklin was diagnosed with polio, which meant he was paralyzed. Many people didn't know that because he was in a wheelchair sitting down when he gave speeches, so many people didn't know. A couple years later, after he was diagnosed, he died of a stroke on April 12, 1945. Next, Harry S. Truman was the president. Then I met John F. Kennedy. We became very good friends. I gave a lot of speeches for him. I got busy traveling. I went to England and visited Queen Elizabeth. Sadly, I died on November 7, 1962. One of my famous quotes was, "What could we accomplish if we knew we could not fail? I am Eleanor Roosevelt."
I was one of the most famous basketball coaches of all time. I also had the best record for wins and losses. I am Kay Yao. I was born in the mid-1900s in Gibsonville, North Carolina. My sisters and I loved to play basketball. When I went to college, I was hoping to be a teacher. I majored in education. When I went to Allen J. School for a teaching position, I ended up as the girls' basketball coach. In 1975, I went to NC State University to coach. I was proud of my success there. I was one of the 6 Division I coaches to make it to the finals. My team and I won 4 ACC tournaments and the NCAA. We also went to the Final Four in 1988. At age 45, I found out I had breast cancer. In 2004, I defeated cancer, but in 2006, it returned. In 2009, I was sent to the hospital the night we played Carolina. My team came 3 hours before the game to see me, and I looked up at them and said, "When life kicks you, let it kick you forward." When they left, my nurse came in and asked if I wanted anything. My last words were just my Bible. Sadly, I died January 24, 2009. Today, I am remembered for being one of the best coaches in basketball history. Also, every year on February 22nd, most teams wear pink to honor me and other women with breast cancer. This day is called Hoops for Hopes. I am Kay Yao.
That is where Napoleon was born. My army and I were in Egypt when we saw warriors off in the distance. I yanked out my sword and yelled, "Charge!" I am Napoleon Bonaparte. I was born on a little island called Corsica on August 15, 1769. My family was very wealthy. I went to very good schools. I also had 4 brothers and 3 sisters. I started school a little later than most people. I started school when I was 5. I was a very playful kid. My favorite game was called War. A couple of years later, I attended College Day Hotel. After college, I went straight to military school. My school was in Brienne, which was northern France. My instructors were so very impressed that me and 4 other fellow students were chosen to go to École Militaire, which was a top-notch military school. My whole family was still on Corsica where I was born, except my dad. He had left to go to France for job reasons when I was younger. Shortly after my dad left to go to France, he died. I was only 16 when he died. He died on February 1785. After I finished military school, I immediately joined the army. I went to my first war. Half of France wanted a king and the other half did not. So the people of the halves went to war. My side, the side that did not want a king, outnumbered the other team by a ton. So my team won the battle. After the war, I skipped several ranks and was promoted to full general for my heroic acts during the war. I had a very good reputation, so I was invited to many parties, and at one of those parties, in late 1795, I met the girl of my dreams. Her name was Josephine. She would soon become my first wife. I was only with her for 2 days, and then I was ordered to go to war with Egypt. My army and I won the battle easily. Then I came back to France. The people of France loved me, but the government wanted nothing to do with me. So my brother, Lucien Bonaparte, was a government official, and he helped convince the government to put me in charge. In 1804, that's exactly what they did. I became Emperor of France. My wife, Josephine, was too old to have kids, so I divorced her and married a different girl named Mary Louise, who was part of the royal family in Austria. My son, Napoleon, and we had my son, Napoleon II. After 10 long years on the throne, I gave it up in 1814, and in the same year, I married Louis XVIII, who becomes king, and he did not like me at all. So he sent me off to an island named Elba. I had a very nice house, but I still hated it. So I made up a tiny army of 600 from people of the island and traveled back to France. And we had an epic battle. I become emperor for 111 days. But once they noticed I'm on the throne, they sent me to a different island called St. Helena Island. I was guarded 24/7. After 5 years, I sadly died on May 5th, 1821, on the same island. Here's a tip that I like to say. Never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake. I am Napoleon Bonaparte. Come on. To the Barnum and Bailey Greatest Show on Earth. I am Phineas Taylor Barnum. I own a very cool museum and an even better circus. I was born on July 5th, 1810 in Bethel, Connecticut. When I was 12, my family in hometown played a prank on me that made me think that I was rich. This experience taught me how to play on pranks on people. When I was 15, my dad died. So I had to take care of my brothers, sisters, and mom. I married Charity Hallett in 1829. My mother did not like this, but finally approved. In 1835, my wife and I had a baby named Caroline, and a customer told me about a woman named Joyce Heth. She was very, very old and was said to be 161 years old. So I went on a bunch of tours with her. She finally died, and I had a doctor look at her. It turns out she was only about 80 years old. After I toured with Joyce Heth, I bought a museum. In the museum, I had animals, wax people, and people who look different. Like Siamese twins and the bearded lady. I tricked a lot of people and was called the Humboldt Prince. I fooled a lot of people with the Fiji mermaid, which was just a monkey and a fish sewn together. I put up a sign that said, "This way to egress," that people followed because they thought it was something new. But it just let them out. So they had to pay more money to get back in. Then I met Charlie Stratton. He was a boy who was very small and was 5 years old. I advertised that his name was General Tom Thumb. He was British and was 11 in case he kept growing. Tom and I went to England and met Queen Victoria. After I toured with General Tom Thumb, my daughter died. Then I heard about Jenny Lind, a Swedish singer. I wanted to take her to America. When she was in her 20s, she was the best singer in Europe. People called her the Swedish Nightingale. After I ended my tour with Jenny, I had raised $500,000. My museum burned down in 1865. Then I built a new one. That one burned down, and I did build another one. I thought I might retire. But then William C. Coop, and then Dan Calistio asked me to start AM Circus with them. And I said yes, and we called it P.T. Barnum's Great Traveling Menagerie Caravan and Hippodrome. Then I added another ring so more people could see the acts. Later I added a third ring. Then people called it the greatest show on earth. When I was out of the country with the circus, my wife died. Surprisingly, I'm married again. I married Nancy Fish, who was 40 years younger than I was. Then I bought a new elephant named Jumbo. He was famous in my circus for several of years. In 1885, we were boarding the circus train. Another train unexpectedly came through and hit and killed Jumbo. I died April 7th, 1891 of a coma. Then they made a movie about me called The Greatest Showman in 2017. I am remembered today for my circus in museum. Advertisers still use my ideas today. I spent my life trying to keep people entertained. But I like to say when entertaining the public, it is best to have them out. I am Phineas Taylor Barnum. Now please enjoy some circus peanuts.
I'm one of the greatest running backs to ever play the game of football. I am Walter Payton. I was born on July 25th, 1954 in Columbia, Missouri. As a young boy, I played the drums. I always loved music. When I was a junior in high school, I tried out for football. I was the best. When I was a senior in high school, I changed schools and went to Columbia High School instead of Jefferson High School. I was the best there too. I attended Jackson State for college. My coach was Bob Hill. He was very tough. After my collegiate career, I had an NCAA record for most points. And I graduated and got my bachelor's degree in special education. In 1975, I was drafted 4th overall to Chicago Bears. At the time, the Bears weren't very good. My rookie season was good, but my second season was even better. In my second season in 1977, I won the league MVP. My teammates started calling me Sweetness because of this. I was really good at high-stepping people, stiff-arming people, trucking people, and hurdling people. I have set many other records. Today I will be moving broken. My all-time rushing record held up until 2002 when I was surpassed by Emmitt Smith. The day I set the single-game rushing record, I had the stomach flu and was throwing up in the locker room. I love fast cars when Scotty went 103 miles per hour. I had a Lamborghini with some company use. I have a wife and 2 kids. My wife is Connie. My kids are Jarrett and Brady. My son Jarrett wanted to play football for Miami. In 1987, I retired and became an announcer. In early 1999, I found out I had rare liver disease and a liver transplant. Later, I found out I had liver cancer. Sadly, on November 1st, 1999, I died in Barrington, Illinois. I was only 46. A famous quote by me is, when you're good at something, just tell everyone. When you're good at something, they'll tell you. Today, I'm remembered to be one of the greatest football players ever. I am Walter Payton.
I am a world-famous actress from the 1930s through 1970s. Hi, I am Lucille Ball. I was born August 6, 1911 in Jamestown, New York. My parents were Henry and Desiree Ball. They called me Lucy. At the age of 3, my father died of typhoid fever, while my mother was in labor with my brother Fred. At the age of 10, I got a job at a hot dog stand. And then I got a job at an ice cream parlor, but I got fired for always forgetting the banana and the banana split.
I love that.
At the age of 15, I dropped out of high school and returned to drum school where they said I lacked talent. At the age of 21, I was a model in the Chesterfield Girl advertisements, which was a cigarette brand. A few years passed, and I got hired to work at Goldwyn Studios, and I got a part in the movie Roman Skittles. In 1940, I got married to Desi Arnaz. Desi and I had our daughter Lucy and our son Desi Jr. My career was acting. I acted in these movies and TV shows such as Yours, Mine, and Ours, Fame, Here's Lucy, Life with Lucy, and I Love Lucy, my most famous comedy. A few years passed and Desi and I divorced. Even though Desi and I divorced, we were still very close friends. I also had some health issues also. They included 2 heart attacks, a heart surgery, and a stroke that made me partially paralyzed. Sadly, I died April 26, 1968 from my 3rd heart attack. It was a sad day. I am remembered for my hilarious humor, comedies, and acting. I am Lucille Ball.
Hi there, I'm a girl who loved music who became a civil rights activist. I am Coretta Scott King. I was born on April 27, 1927 in Maryland, Alabama. My parents owned a farm in Huckleberry. During the Great Depression, I helped pick cotton to support the family, but I would often brag about how fast I could pick the cotton. At the age of 5, my sister Edith and I started going to school. Walking home was hard. Classmates were starting to bother Edith. Ellie Lark cried, "Don't do that, she's my sister." Later on, I moved to listen to our family so I'd be closer to Lincoln School, which was far from my home. I sang at school recitals. I studied music at Angels College in Yellow Springs. I received a bachelor's degree, and in 1951 enrolled as a scholarship student. Also in Boston, I met Martin Luther King Jr., who was a graduate student. On the end of the day, he said, "The 4 things I look for in a wife are character, intelligence, personality, and beauty. You had them all." Last September, Martin and I bought a house, and I bought a piano and started teaching Sunday school. A year after moving to Alabama, I had my first child, Yolanda. Then Dexter, then Martin Luther King III, and then Bernice. After Rosa Parks was arrested, the boycotts on buses started. And a few days later, I was at home watching TV with a friend. My house was bombed. As I got along, the phone rang. Someone said, "Yes, I did it, and I'm sorry I didn't kill all of you." As Martin was home, as soon as he heard what happened, he said, "We must miss hate with love." For the boycott's 1-year anniversary, I sang at a concert off my own words. My feet are tired, but my soul is rested. The concert was a success, so African Americans could sit wherever they wanted. But on Friday, April 12th, Martin was arrested. I knew a black man could be killed before trial, so I called President John F. Kennedy. Thanks to the call, Martin could bathe, exercise, and ride a letter while in prison. On Monday afternoon, the phone rang. I picked it up, but so did little Dexter, and he started talking baby talk. Once my children saw an ad for a music park, they begged to go. At first, they made excuses, but finally told them about segregation. Over the years, there would be more concerts, so I sent my children to an integrated school. But a few days later, Martin was shot and killed, so I booked a flight to Memphis. While at the airport, I heard my name over the loudspeakers and stood there crying because I knew that Martin had died. But a few days later, I spoke at an anti-war rally in New York City. I started the Martin Luther King Jr. Center. Sadly, my last appearance was on January 14, 2006. I remember for printing Martin started keeping his legacy alive. I am Curtis Scott King.
I was one of the greatest rookies breaking records left and right and a great soldier serving in the Army. I am Pat Tillman. I was born November 6, 1967 in New Almaden, California. I never liked being still. I'd even come out of my crib at night and bang on my door until my parents came. 2 years later, my brother Kevin was born. I loved hanging out with him. I'd even climb into Kevin's crib at night and then fall asleep with him. On Kevin's 3rd birthday, Richard was born. I was a very adventurous kid. I even jumped out of my window onto a tree 7 feet away. When I was 4, my mom signed me up for football. At first, I hated it, but as I got older, I started to love it. I would play any position and dominate at it. Only a few years later, I got drafted by the Arizona. Only a few years later, I got a scholarship with Arizona State University. I won the Clyde B. Smith Academic Award in 1996 and 1997. About a year later, I got drafted by the Arizona Cardinals. I was a great NFL player, even as a rookie. Oh my gosh, I need something. Then I got offered a contract for 3 years and $3.6 million. I declined. I've always had more on my mind after 9/11 happened, so I decided to join the Army. But this meant I had to quit football. When I joined the Army, my brother tagged along. We did just about everything together. We did skydiving and learned how to use a parachute. Then on April 22nd, 2004, I was in Afghanistan searching for the enemy when I was ambushed. When I was running away, I was shot 3 times in the head and once in the foot by my men. I sadly died at the age of 37 by friendly fire. Today I'm remembered for being one of the greatest rookies in the NFL and a great soldier serving in the Army. I am Patrick Daniels Tillman.
I am known as a peace-loving man and a genius with crazy hair. Hi, I'm Albert Einstein. I was born March 14th, 1879, the same year the electric light bulb was invented. My head was really big and my parents worried something was wrong with me. The first time I ever talked was when my sister was born. Her name was Maja. I also had a parrot named Laura. One day I was sick in bed and my mom and dad wanted to give me a gift. The gift was a compass. When I saw the compass, I started asking a lot of questions. I thought it was cool how one magnet could be so strong. When I was in school, kids made a lot of fun of me. When I was in high school, people got punished for asking questions. My family moved to Italy, but I had to stay and finish high school. Even though I soon got expelled for asking too many questions. Even though I got to go to Italy with my family, I was still really embarrassing getting expelled. Italy was a sunny place. I loved it there. While I was in college, I fell in love with a girl named Maliva. We started spending more and more time together and eventually wanted to get married.
The problem was I couldn't afford it, and my parents didn't want me to marry her because she got sick often, and she was 5 years older than me. Luckily, my friend offered me a good job. At the job, I finished all my work in 1 hour and spend the rest of the time working on my experiments. When I finally had enough money, I married Maliva. We had 2 sons and 1 daughter. Me and Maliva are spending less and less time together and eventually got divorced, though. Soon after I married Elsa, I also had this prediction that if you traveled the speed of light, not wearing a watch, away from a clock, you would freeze in time. At first, not many people paid attention to my prediction, but when I was proven right, people were really surprised. People started writing letters to me after more of my predictions were proven right. One girl even wrote a letter saying she needed help with her math homework. I traveled many places and met many famous people. I even won the Nobel Prize for Physics. I even won the Nobel Prize. In 1931, I was declared a spy. Even though I hated war, I helped make the atomic bomb. Soon after, Elsa died, and I regretted making the bomb and became a U.S. citizen. I died 1955. I am remembered as a peace-loving man and a genius with crazy hair. I am Albert Einstein.
Okay. I was one of the most famous chefs in the 1900s. I had my own TV show and wrote my own cookbooks. I am Jewish. I was born on August 15th, 1912 in Pasadena, California. People always thought I was a prankster because I would climb up trees and throw mud at neighbors. As a child, I went to Catherine Manson School. I was normally chosen to do boy parts in plays because I was tall with short hair. When I was done with school, I won the school cup. I went to Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts, just like my mother. I didn't know how to cook, so I went to fast food restaurants. When I was done with college, I moved to New York City to work for W&JC. My dad wanted me to marry Herschel Chandler, but that didn't happen. I switched to a different job, and that's when I met Paul Child. We started hanging out together even though I was 10 years older. The day before we got married, we both got in a car crash. The crash didn't stop us from getting married. Later, Paul and I moved to Paris. Paul loved to see me make mistakes in the kitchen. I decided to go to cooking classes. I went to the cordon bleu. I refused to stay in the beginner class. I wanted to talk to the head of the school. Madame Brassard said I could go up to the professional class. When I was done and I was on my final exam, I failed. I then took it again and passed. I made a cookbook with my friends from the school called Mastering the Art of French Cooking. Paul and I moved back to the United States to see my mother in California who was suffering from a kidney disease. We went back to Massachusetts and when Paul heard about me, and Boston heard about me. They wanted a show with me in it, so I accepted the invitation. My first show was a success, and one of the episodes I made it taken me. I was very sick. Later in my career, I felt well. On August 13th, 2004, I died of a kidney failure. I remember today from how I put a little spice.
I am known for my book, Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl. I am Anne Frank. I was born on June 12, 1929 in Frankfurt, Germany. I grew up with my parents, Otto and Edith Frank, older sister Margot, and grandmother Oma. We were all German Jews. In 1940, Adolf Hitler came to rule Germany. He hated all German Jews and wanted to get rid of them. He blamed them on all Germany's problems. That year we moved to the Netherlands. Because it was close by, my father spoke Dutch and everyone got along. No, that's 1940.
In 1940, Adolf Hitler had also ruled the Netherlands. We had no freedom anymore. We couldn't ride bikes or drive cars. We couldn't even watch movies, which was my favorite. A little later, we got a letter that said my older sister Margot was going to a labor camp. My father was not happy and decided to move above the warehouse he worked in. The warehouse made jam and picked an ingredient used in jam. We moved 1 week after my 13th birthday, which is the year that I got my diary. I named my diary Kitty. It was my best friend. I told Kitty everything. I told her how we had to whisper and could barely make any noise while we were hiding. A little later, another family moved in. After 2 years of living in the annex, the neighbors heard a noise coming from the annex and got scared and called the soldiers. The soldiers looked and found the fake bookcase with the door behind it. They took all of us. My mother died from starvation, and me and my sister died from a disease called typhus. My father got out because the war had ended. He came to look for us in the annex, but all he found was my diary. Soon he published it, and it is now read all over the world. The annex is now a museum where people can visit. I am Anne Frank.